Istio is pretty complex, and actually what we want to talk about today is how you can use Istio in your organization, which is what we did to solve many problems, because it does a lot of things, but at the same time, keep it simple for the R&D. So few words about me. I'm a production engineer at Similarweb, where I really like playing around with Kubernetes and writing Rust and Go code, and basically I like everything about distributed systems and cloud. You can work and collaborate with me on GitHub if you see my name, or follow me on Twitter, and if you do, it will be you and my girlfriend.
Hi everyone, I'm a production engineer as well as the same team as Isan. I also came from the front-end world, so web applications, and that's it.
So just 2 words about the context we're in. Similarweb is a big data company. Basically, we measure the internet and we provide data analytics. Many of our workloads are on microservices, so Kubernetes is something we adopt, and we use AWS EKS. We run in an active setup where we are cross-region. We handle about 100K RPS and 10 petabyte of compute a day. So before we went into Istio, we wanted to use actually and leverage our product to analyze and see which service mesh is popular, because adoption is very important in this new age where things break and support stops working. So we looked at our platform at the 3 biggest service meshes out there. So Istio, you can see in terms of traffic into the website, is winning by far. Which was very appealing to us. The first blue arrow shows COVID, so we can see a spike. And the second arrow is actually, I guess, it's related to the awesome Istio release 1.6, where everything got merged into Istio D. And in terms of geography, also, we picked the 5 most countries that use those service meshes, and Istio wins everywhere. So in China, it's like 93% adoption, in the United States, 76%, et cetera, So we actually saw that it's very popular, and we said, okay, let's do it.
So configuring Istio workload is hard. When you want to configure Istio workload, you have a lot of stuff you need to configure, such as service account, deployment, authorization, config map, service, authorization policy, virtual service, destination rules, invoice filter. We have just a lot of configurations to do, and our R&D team just get losing it. So we have a few problems, like how do we enforce best practice configurations, and our R&D need to chase DevOps teams to become bottleneck, and it's hard to maintain a standard. So we wanted to provide an easy Istio onboarding. So we came up with a solution. We promised them it's only going to be YAML, but we came up with a solution that's going to simplify the workflow around the file.
So the promise of only having a YAML, it worked, but the YAML was too long and was too complex, so we had to abstract the problem. We had a few challenges we wanted to tackle as an infrastructure team. We wanted to minimize the prerequisite of a learning curve. We didn't like that it has a huge learning curve for our R&D. We wanted to prevent the copy pasting everywhere. People were just copy and pasting values files when they were deploying Istio configuration. And the security is pretty complex, so we wanted to keep everything intact with MTLS and authorization and stuff like this. Our ingress routing also gets pretty complex, so we wanted people to accidentally not to expose an internal endpoint to an external one. And the visibility, and at the end of the day, the challenge we wanted to solve is also allow rapid development for the R&D. So we built the UI. The UI was an abstraction. It didn't use Istio terms, and a developer would go and say like, yeah, I want this environment. By the way, there's a real demo at the end. So I want this environment, some SLA, maybe I'll pick some environment variables. I'll throw my config inside. In terms of availability, So I have these tooltips explaining everything. I'll pick the seconds, the health check and rolling upgrade, resources, we'll throw all this in. So here you can see in authorization, we added those ticks where it's like force MTLS and whatever, everything we need. And at the end of the day, there would be a pop-up that says to anyone of the users, hey, give me your repo, I'll create a pull request with the values file for the chart that we build on top of the UI we build on top of it, and it would be ready to deploy. But
so configuring React workload is out. So we shifted the problem from our DevOps team into our internal team. So for every new feature we want to add to our chart, we needed to learn React and learn how to write UI components and how to deploy it. And then we had the new bugs. So everything just took a really, really long time, and we faced a new problem. So our team just got a new friends and learning curve, and the charts were keeping change. And we had longer development cycles, and every change took us a week just to deploy, and nobody wanted to handle it because it's front-end work and nobody likes front-end work. And so we started to think about what we can do and how we can solve the situation, and we came up with the new solution. And the new solution had new requirements, so we wanted to remove the UI work completely and keep the UI. We wanted to provide a solution that will support a few charts on the same time, so it will be agnostic, and it will be easy to maintainable for our team. So I want to introduce you Chartify. Chartify is our new solution. It's actually a change from one service to a platform. And this platform is gonna handle the dynamic UI rendering based on YAML. So all you need to do is just to write it one time, a YAML configuration, and we're gonna create the entire UI for you. So it's gonna be easy, just write a YAML. As you can see, this is from our system, from our internal system. On the right side, you can see just the configuration YAML. We have stages, we have block types, we have inputs. So you can say, hey, I want a radio button, or I want a row that will be closed, or I want a dialog. On the left side, you can see all kinds of block types or all kinds of inputs that you can use. And we just keep providing that. And I think it's best that Isan will show you the demo.
Cool. So, okay, it's time for the real new version of our Chartify, which we used to call Helm Generator. So it actually runs already in production and everything, but for the purpose of the demo, because I'm going to tweak it a little bit, I'm running this on localhost. So basically what you're seeing here is a UI on top of abstracting some chart, and specifically a chart that's called Common Helm chart. And we can configure different things here. So as a developer, I have this journey of blocks where I'd come and I say, okay, I'm from the web group. I want production environment. I want the infra cluster. I want to run an East one in terms of region. If I need some advanced settings, I can add here. Deployment name. So let's say my app is called Redis API. I don't know. We added the deployment. And on the right side, everything is generated all the time. And I can keep going. So I'd say, oh, I need 4 and replica counts. And here it explains what it means. And maybe I need this environment variable that is like ADDR, DB, I don't know, some ADDR. And I would have this mounted, maybe some game with ports. So HTTP, cool. Yeah, so it would create a service. I don't really need to know what I'm doing, just read. So expose your service in the cluster. So actually, maybe it's external service. So I'll pick, everything adopts and changes here. And maybe I created this, I don't know, maybe some domain that I created. So I want it to be routed. So the virtual service will actually route everything to this domain, liveness probes. I'm not going to go over this because the point is that how it was generated and which problem it solved. But basically here, there's so many configuration and the defaults are already configured. and developers can just start and tweak the things that they need. So now, after we configure all of this, I can take my Helm, my values file, and just deploy it to with the chart. But the real problem that we tried to solve is not this UI, because the developers loved it, but then we would want to change the field in the UI. So let's say right now we have this group, environment, cluster, and region. So how this project works is you have this, actually we defined a YAML, a block kit, we call it. The feature is block kit builder. We stole it from Slack. And basically we describe the UI in YAML, and then at the same time we describe how it should look in the values file. So for example, if I look here at the value of region, which shows 2 regions, I'll look here in the YAML and I'll see that there is a block input type with region and Helm path dot region. This would be the path in Helm, and options. So I would want to use some data source to display available regions. So this is a feature as well. And then it would go here and show. So maybe just for like a very simple example, I'll add here another block. All right. So this means I changed my chart. I added another field. And now as a production engineer, I want to update this UI. I would go here and let's call it a team Istio, and add the field of like team Istio. And maybe instead of regions, we call it team Istio, custom team 1, custom team 2. Change the data source, and then, so basically now in production, I would just redeploy the service. It's a Helm chart, right? Running on Kubernetes. Yeah. So this is the fate of live demos.
Have a double space in the source.
What?
You have invalid YAML. Indentation problem.
Okay, again, sorry, it's all about the YAMLs, you see, it's error prone. Yeah, so let's say I'm adding this. Yeah, so now we have 2 regions. Let's call it Team Istio. So suddenly we have this field here, Team Istio, and maybe it's like pick my favorite meetup Istio team, and reload. Maybe like again in the values file, let's call it Istio. We render, so we get this. Like everything is re-rendered. So in production, you would redeploy this, and everything changes. So basically, what this means that now the onboarding for developers is really easy because they can decide what they want to do without writing all the values and all the errors that you saw just happened to me right now. And yeah, basically that's it. So this is the demo, and the idea is that we can load any UI configuration into it, and everything gets reloaded immediately, so it can support multi-charts and version of different charts. And that's it. So Rotem, you want to update what's next?
Yeah, so we're going to open source Chartify, and we're gonna add few more cool features like drag and drop interface, so you won't get errors like Isan did in his demo. And we hope to open a Chartify registry, so all of you can push your charts into the registry, and we can have like a big one hub for charts. And we hope to join the CNCF.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed it. By the way, we're releasing this month. We hope maybe next month, but we will be releasing this fully to open source. So you can check out Similarweb GitHub repo. We also have other projects, but yeah. So thank you. And if you have any questions.
Hey, Isan, this is Shakti. I have a couple of questions. So first question about the Chartify things demo you showed. So the environment specific YAMLs, why do we need to generate it? So why can't we use the Helm chart based overriding options? Because Helm chart provides the override options, right? So what is the difference between the Chartify version of creating a neuron based one versus overriding? So what we are trying to achieve here?
So basically what would happen, it's a great question. I'll show you, our values files gets very, very big. So it's not about the override. So if you see here, you have this kind of, you can do, actually, let's see if the UI, I'm still sharing, cool. So I can add here app one, right? And boom, I have this one deployment, but then I would like to add another one. So app two, and it's like an umbrella chart that can do many things. And suddenly this chart has many stuff. And so this is just an example. We wanted to solve a use case for the R&D where they can deploy a stack in one chart. So a stack that contains maybe a stateful set, a cron job, and 2 deployments, and they all play together. Now, the defaults would change every time because the values are very complex. It depends on the environment and on the field that you need. So basically, the override is perfect, but what we really needed is for people to understand the values of what they're putting in. And when they were just using Helm charts, so first of all, a lot of errors with like indentations, but mainly bad configuration and lack of knowledge. So people wouldn't do what fields do. And using this way of kind of explaining everything in tooltips help them easily on board. And also, the chart uses very specific Istio language. For example, a chart could say like, give me the virtual service, blah, 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 blah. But in the UI, we would abstract this and say, just like, give me the endpoints that you want to be routed to. So this help, like, it's like a gamification of using Helm charts and configuring Istio stuff.
Okay, got you. I have another question. It's a general when Rotem was explaining about, I mean, I have been using Istio for a long time. I mean, I'm using gateways, virtual service. I mean, most of the components I'm using, like what he is explaining. So sometimes we miss to add, if you are adding a gateway and virtual service, we miss to add service entry kind of it. Then we come up with some templated version and we are following it that pattern. Is there any simplified way of adding those components? Okay, for example, if I want to add one ingress entry into an Istio, so these are all the components will get added by default. So like that, will that be happen with the Chartify, or it's not included here?
Yeah, so basically, I guess, sorry, Rotem, you wanted to answer?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, maybe you want to show him the security part? We have him, so just answer his question.
Yeah, so for example, in the security policy, you can say like, okay, I want to make like an allow policy, enable whether create or not authorization policy. So for example, whether it's gateway or virtual service, doesn't matter. Like this is just an example. So yeah, create one. I'll mark it as HTTP service. And here comes the abstraction example. So allow current stack. And it says, will allow all services deployed in the release to communicate. Basically, if I'm deploying 5 services, this by the chart internally will configure the authorization policies, each one service account, and configure them to talk to each other by default, because this is what I would like to do. Because I don't know, some service that contains out of 5 microservices, and just marking this will configure all the authorization policies to allow each other. Maybe accept traffic from outside the mesh, who can access my service. So I would say it's another service.
It's important to say that this UI, it's representing a chart that we have in our company. Okay.
Okay, got you.
The purpose of Chartify is to present your chart.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, this is Lynn. I like the demo. So just making sure we understand this thing you are open source, that's about that's not really related to Istio. It's more about enabling users to build Helm contents and generate the contents and the YAML visualize more effectively. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. I would say
Okay.
though that the problem really started once we adopted Istio for many problems we had.
Yeah.
And then the configuration just became very, so Istio solved all of the problems we needed in one platform, but the configuration became really hard. But yeah, it's definitely for any chart. Basically, it's a platform that generates value files and UI blocks and can bring them together.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. I think it's a very valuable. Now, I was wondering, is it possible for us to get like the contents of the YAML? Because we're interested to see how you customize Istio to your business needs, just the YAML piece. Would that be something you would be interested to share with the audience here?
So in terms of the YAML, this is literally it. Like it's a custom chart we have. But this is like the YAML. So basically,
so this is all the customization, because this doesn't show all the customization on your middle set, right? Does it?
So this is not the Helm chart, of course, if I understand you correctly. But this is literally a real values file that people would use. Like it's based, the UI that is rendered here is based on a real Helm chart that we deploy. It's called common Helm chart because it's common to many services and many people use this in the R&D.
But okay, so basically everything you allow user to customize, which you are showing us here, is in the values box that you are showing on the right side. Yeah, is that something you could share with us? Because it's interesting to see, you know, what other things you are customizing. Obviously, you know, we can envision, you know, what you are generating, like virtual services, destination rule, you know, using this configuration.
Oh, so you mean like what's happening inside the chart itself?
No, just what are the customization you expose? I can envision how you are generating the Istio artifacts. Maybe some other people would be interested, but I think I could have a pretty good idea. I mean, if you are willing to open source or just provide samples, it could be valuable for other community members too.
Yeah, so basically, I'm not sure, Lynn, tell me if I understood you correctly. But first of all, this is something that we plan to open source. We are now in the stage of just refining this and taking out like Similarweb specific, like just keywords out of the README and just refining this a little bit, adding a new logo with the design team. And we plan to open source this or the following months. And then you can see in the internals of how it works. But basically, the idea is that you will not need to write a chart. You will just need to learn a little bit about this YAML syntax we created, not syntax, but the new definitions. And then you'll be able to take your charts and describe them in this YAML, and the UI would be rendered dynamically.
Yeah, I understand that. So what you are open source, I guess it's not so interesting to me. What I'm mostly interested is the abstraction you are presenting to us specifically for Istio, like the values on your right side, right? And the UI you are showing, and then how that translates to Istio resources. Does that make sense? I'm interested in how you leverage Istio to provide the abstraction with your tool Helm generator to your user, but I'm mostly interested in the Istio portion.
Okay, so in terms of, for example, security, maybe I'm missing the questions, but like you're asking how are we abstracting, how are we kind of providing the R&D ways to interact with Istio, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, this security policy is nothing but an authorization policy in Istio.
Okay.
And
so,
with a lot.
Isan, actually, what she is trying to ask is, for example, in Istio, right? So you are saying that is HTTP allowed? This is your base. If you are enable it, you are generating the deployment YAML for the Istio, right? Istio resources. How you are coming up with those resources? So that's what she is trying to understand. That's what is my understand right?
Yeah,
Lynn?
so
All right.
right, exactly. So why are you exposing this configuration? And from this configuration, what are the underlying Istio resources are you generating?
Gotcha. So let's look at this from a different perspective. I'm improvising a little bit here, but so basically we're generating a Helm chart. And if we look here, our Helm chart, like with some logic, would create different resources. So again, with security, basically it would be, oops, it's too big. So it would be this authorization policy. And for example, this is the is HTTP, which is not related to the UI at all.
Mhm.
This is like from the Helm chart. So we have this policy, and Istio for identity purposes for authorization would require a service account. So we also create a service account. And like in very simple way, it's simply a Helm chart, but the UI is a
Right.
platform to
Yeah, that's
generate
what we are
values
asking.
for the chart.
Yeah, so remember, you are talking to an Istio audience here. So I think most people probably are interested in your common services, like the values that YAML and what are the resources you are generating, which is what exactly you are showing to us. So would you be open to share that with the audience here? Like maybe in a repo or whatever. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I think we can work on it. We can actually, I think with the open source of the UI, we will release this chart also, because we are targeting Istio community. Like we think it would be a great adoption there. So we would need, like, the chart is very opinionated, obviously, so you wouldn't have a lot to do with this. So we would need to make it a little bit more general, unless Similarweb specific, because, for example, in the hosts file, right? So when we're using a virtual service, a developer would just say, give me like a DNS with some endpoints. He doesn't know, like they don't need to know anything. But at the end of the day, we need to configure this virtual service to a gateway. And the gateway is routed with some ingress gateway. So doing this is pretty annoying. So we have this like helper methods in Helm that are generating all the configuration based on common patterns we have of names.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, so I believe we will release this this chart, like maybe a little bit simplified and less opinionated version with the Helm UI to demonstrate how it can solve complexity. So just to summarize, and I hope it helps, ingress gateways and gateways are configured with Terraform on the infrastructure level. And then every group gets their group namespaces. They can use as many as they like. And the networking on the side of the group would be using virtual services. And the security would be done mainly with authorization policies. And the rest is just deployments, config maps, and things like that.
Yeah,
Does
makes
this make
sense.
sense?
Yeah,
right.
Totally. Would you be share your slides for the meeting too?
Yes. By the way, how can I share them?
You can email them to me, and would it make sense, Lynn and Isan, if I put them in the meeting agenda? You know how we have that Google Doc with the agenda? I could just link it there. Would that be
Perfect.
That would be
Will do.
perfect. Yeah, because I think you had some interesting slides at the beginning to highlight some of the challenging people adopting Istio. So that was interesting too.
Sure. So thank you very much. And yeah, will do.
So if anyone else has any questions or comments or would like to continue to engage with Isan and Rotem, I think, oh yeah, Rotem's still here. We still have time. And I would like to call everyone's attention to the survey that I have launched. Your feedback is really important to us for these meetups. So if you could just take a couple of moments to provide feedback on that survey, it would be really helpful. And I would like to draw the speaker's attention to the chat. You have some feedback from some of the participants, which I think would be of interest to you. So we have amazing job, guys. Can't wait for it to be released on GitHub. Wow, it is so cool. Waiting to get my hands on Chartify, and amazing. So that's really positive
Thank
feedback
you.
that I wanted to bring your attention to.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to ask questions, comments?
So what is the timeline we are looking for the open sourcing Chartify?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, it has to come with the company's priority. It's not the main concern for us, but because it is already done, it is already general, and the only work, we literally considered doing this before the meetup, but it was just too stretched. The only work we need to do is just add more config, add more documentation, and make it a little bit more general in terms of like removing places where documentation or files maybe have the similar web name. So I believe that we can, we are planning to release this in the following months or maybe top the next one.
That's cool. That's good to know. Thanks, Isan.
Sure. All right. Yeah, so thank you everyone, I guess.
Yeah, if we don't have any more pending items or questions, comments for our speakers, we can end the meetup, but I just want to make sure that everybody feels that they had the time to ask their questions, and in the general Istio community, if there's anything that you would like to bring up in regards to the agenda. I didn't see any items on the agenda, but I do want to give people the opportunity if that.
All right, so I think,
yeah, I'm going to take that silence as there's nothing more to add. I would like to thank both our speakers, Isan and Rotem, for their talk today. And everyone have a happy and healthy rest of the day.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you everybody for your time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.